Marcus Hale had learned early in life that love was not a feeling, it was a decision. And every single morning, when he walked into his daughter's room and watched her sleeping face, so small, so peaceful, so unaware of the war being fought for her life, he made that decision again. Lily was 5 years old. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, and she had a rare autoimmune condition that most doctors had never seen up close before. The illness attacked her body from the inside, quietly, the way water erodes stone, slowly, persistently, without mercy. Marcus had spent 3 years reading medical journals he barely understood, calling insurance companies that rarely picked up, and working double shifts at a logistics firm just to keep her treatments running. He had not been on a date since his wife left. He had not taken a vacation. He had not thought about himself in so long that he had almost forgotten what his own preferences were. He liked his coffee black, he liked quiet mornings, and he was completely, thoroughly exhausted. The letter from the insurance company arrived on a Friday. It was polite in the way that terrible things sometimes are. Clean fonts, professional language, a reference number at the top. It informed him that effective the following month, Lily's specialist treatments would no longer be covered under his current plan. He read it 3 times. Then he folded it and put it in his pocket and went to make Lily her breakfast, because she liked her eggs scrambled and her toast cut into triangles, and some things still had to happen regardless of everything else. It was his lawyer, a calm and practical woman named Sandra, who first mentioned Elena Voss. "She's a client of mine," Sandra said, sitting across from Marcus in her small office. "And she has a situation. An unusual one. I wouldn't bring it to you if I didn't think it might genuinely help you both." Marcus listened. Elena Voss was 38 years old and worth more money than Marcus could picture. She had built Novamed Solutions, a medical technology company, from nothing, starting in a hospital room after a spinal injury had left her using a wheelchair permanently at 27. She was sharp, demanding, occasionally difficult, and one of the most respected founders in her industry. She was also facing a problem that no amount of money could straightforwardly solve. Her board of directors, a group of older, conservative investors, had privately communicated that they were hesitant about her leadership image going into a major funding round. They wanted to see stability. They wanted someone who looked, in their limited and outdated view, settled. They wanted a family behind her. Elena found this offensive. She also found it, frustratingly, true enough to be a real obstacle. Her solution was a contract. 12 months, a legal marriage on paper, a trusted, vetted individual who would attend events with her, live in her home, project the image the board wanted, and otherwise leave her alone to run her company. In return, she was prepared to offer a monthly stipend, full housing, and, the part that made Marcus go very still when Sandra said it, complete enrollment for Lily into the Novamed-affiliated pediatric program at the country's leading children's hospital. The same program Marcus had been trying to access for 2 years, but could not afford. "She's not asking for anything romantic," Sandra said carefully. "She's asking for professionalism and discretion." Marcus looked at his hands. He thought about the folded letter in his jacket pocket. He thought about Lily eating her triangled toast that morning, humming a song she had invented herself. "When can I meet her?" he said. Elena Voss was not what he expected, though he could not have said exactly what he had expected. She was direct without being rude, precise without being cold, at least not entirely. She sat behind a large glass desk in a penthouse office that looked out over the city, and she spoke to him the way she probably spoke to everyone, clearly, efficiently, without decoration. "I don't need a performance," she said. "I need someone reliable, someone who won't complicate things." "I have a daughter," Marcus said. "She would come with me." "I know. Sandra told me. That's acceptable. She asks a lot of questions. Most interesting people do." Marcus studied her for a moment. There was something behind the efficiency, something careful and guarded that he recognized, because he wore the same thing himself, just differently. "I'll agree," he said. "For Lily." "Of course," Elena said. She did not seem offended by the honesty. If anything, she seemed to respect it. They signed the papers the following week. Moving into Elena's penthouse was like moving into a museum. Everything was expensive, tasteful, and completely without personality. There were no photographs on the walls, no clutter on the counters. The kitchen looked as if it had never been used, which, Marcus would soon discover, it largely had not. Elena had a meal delivery service and no particular interest in cooking. Marcus cooked. It was one of the things he did without thinking, garlic and onion going into a pan, something warm building in the air. The first time the smell of a real dinner drifted through the apartment, Elena appeared in the kitchen doorway with an expression that was almost difficult to read, not quite surprise. Something softer. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I was cooking for Lily anyway," he said. "There's extra." She ate with them that night. She sat at the far end of the table and contributed very little to the conversation, but she stayed. And the next night, and the one after that. Lily, who had not been told the full truth about the arrangement and simply understood that they were living with a new friend for a while, treated Elena the way she treated everyone, with immediate and complete acceptance. She rolled her toy wagon down the hallway outside Elena's office one morning, pretending it was a wheelchair. "I'm a boss," she announced, when Elena opened the door. Elena looked at the wagon, then at Lily. "Are you?" "Yes, like you." Lily looked at her very seriously. "You're the boss of everything, right?" "Of most things," Elena said. "I'm going to be the boss of more things," Lily said, and wheeled herself away down the hall. Elena stood in her doorway for a long moment before going back to her desk. She did not get very much work done for the next hour. The months moved. The apartment changed, in small ways, the way places do when people actually live in them. There were drawings stuck to Elena's office door, Lily's versions of the city skyline, the three of them at a table, a picture labeled Mama E that Elena carefully removed one evening and placed, quietly, in her desk drawer instead of the recycling bin. At a formal board dinner in the 4th month, a senior investor made a comment about Elena that was dressed up as concern but was really something meaner. He talked about the challenges of her situation, the perception issues, the difficulty of asking international partners to take seriously a leader who was, in his careful wording, limited in certain capacities. The table went politely quiet. Marcus set down his fork. He spoke quietly, the way he did everything. He listed Novamed's growth figures from memory. He named 3 industry awards Elena had received in the past 2 years. He noted that the investor's own portfolio had underperformed in sectors where Elena's company was accelerating. He was not rude. He was simply exact. And by the end, the investor had nothing left to say. Elena did not thank him that night. She waited until they were in the car on the way home, and then she said simply, "You didn't have to do that." "No," Marcus agreed. She looked out the window. "Thank you." The hospital call came on a Tuesday night. Lily had crashed. A severe flare, her body turning against itself with a sudden and frightening force. By the time Marcus arrived, she was already hooked to monitors, her small face pale under the fluorescent lights. The specialist came in the next morning. He was kind in the way doctors learn to be when they have had to say hard things many times. He talked about the progression of the condition. He talked about adjusting expectations. He used the words quality of life and realistic outcomes and comfort-focused care, and Marcus heard all of it through a kind of distant ringing in his ears. He stayed calm in the room. He asked the right questions. He held Lily's hand until she fell asleep. He made it to the parking garage before his legs stopped working properly. He sat down on the cold concrete and put his head in his hands. Elena found him there. He did not know how long she had been in the hospital. She had come without calling, without announcing herself. She wheeled up beside him and sat there in the dim, cold quiet of the garage, and she did not say a single word. She did not offer comfort that would have felt hollow. She just stayed. They sat together for a long time. What Marcus did not know, what Elena had told no one, was that 4 months earlier, she had quietly redirected a portion of Novamed's research budget toward a pediatric immunotherapy trial. A new approach, experimental, aimed specifically at the kind of autoimmune dysfunction Lily had. Elena had not told Marcus because she did not believe in offering hope without evidence. She had told herself it was just good business, funding a promising area of research. She had not examined too closely why that particular area had become a priority. The lead researcher called 3 days after Lily's hospitalization. The trial had early results. Lily was a candidate. The following months were the hardest of Marcus's life. And also the most important. The treatment was not easy. There were setbacks, adjustments, a night in the ICU that neither Marcus nor Elena talked about afterward because some things were too sharp to touch. They took shifts at the hospital. They stopped being careful about the invisible lines of their arrangement. They simply became two people trying to hold something together. And then, slowly, it started to work. Lily's results began to shift. Numbers that had been moving in the wrong direction reversed. The inflammation markers that her specialist had described as unlikely to improve significantly dropped to levels that made the research team go quiet in a way that meant something good. On a morning in late spring, 6 months into the trial, Lily walked down a hospital corridor by herself. No support, no aid, just a 5-year-old in a hospital gown, very focused, placing one foot in front of the other. Marcus stood at one end of the hallway. He did not make a sound. The specialist who had recommended comfort-focused care stood nearby. He watched. He did not speak either. He would later write a careful, detailed case study about what he had witnessed, the kind of medical documentation that other doctors would read and question and eventually believe. Elena was sitting at the other end of the hallway. When Lily reached her, she put her small hands on Elena's wheels and looked up at her with great seriousness. "I did it," Lily said. "Yes," Elena said. "You did." The 12-month mark arrived the way endings do, quietly, without drama. The funding round had closed. Novamed had secured its investment, the largest in the company's history. Sandra prepared the paperwork to formalize the end of the arrangement. Neither Marcus nor Elena signed it. The conversation happened not in any remarkable setting, but at the kitchen table, on a regular evening, after Lily was asleep. There was cold coffee. There was the sound of the city outside. Marcus spoke first, which surprised him, because he was not generally someone who spoke first. He said that he had tried to remember what mornings felt like before, and he could not do it clearly anymore. Elena was quiet for a while. She was someone who chose words carefully, who had spent years making sure she never said more than she meant. When she spoke, she said that she had built everything in her life with a specific purpose, a goal, a target, a return on investment. She had never built anything just because it made her feel, for the first time in a long time, like a person who belonged somewhere. "I'm not good at this," she said. "Neither am I," Marcus said. "That's not particularly reassuring." "I know." He looked at her. "But I'm not going anywhere." She looked back at him for a long time. Then she picked up her coffee cup, found it cold, and set it back down. "I suppose," she said, very carefully, "that's enough." 3 years later, Elena sat before a Senate subcommittee and spoke about disability, leadership, and what it costs a country when it underestimates people. She was direct, and she was precise, and she did not soften a single thing. The room listened in the particular silence that falls when someone is saying exactly what needs to be said. In the front row of the public gallery, Lily sat with a small notebook in her lap. She was 8 now, and doing well. Not without difficulty, not without continued care, but well in the truest sense. She had started writing down things she wanted to remember, things she wanted to do. At the top of the page that morning, in careful, crooked letters, she had written, "Important words that matter." She filled 3 pages before lunch. Outside, Marcus waited in the hall. He had brought coffee, real coffee, hot, the way Elena liked it. And he was reading a book, comfortable in the particular way of someone who has stopped waiting for his life to settle down and has simply started living it instead. The doctors who had written Lily's future in pencil were not in the building. But she was. She was there, notebook in hand, watching a woman she called her mother change the conversation in a room full of people who had not thought it was possible. Which, if you knew anything about either of them, was exactly what you should have expected all along.